Hello everyone, and welcome back to another Deltarune themes video. It's not really a theory video, but we're going to talk about Deltarune's meta-narrative, specifically because of Side B. So, in the Weird Route in Chapter 5 of Deltarune, we literally go out of bounds with Noelle, seemingly, and then we end up at Chapter 7, Side B. We skip Chapter 6 by going out of bounds. And I feel like that has, I don't want to say awakened a bunch of people to the idea of Deltarune having metatextual elements, but more so cemented in their minds that it's something to think about, you know? Like, I feel like there were a lot of people who are denying Deltarune would have metatextual elements at all. But here we are. No matter what we think, there's something going on, at least on the Weird Route. And so I want to talk about that, why I think it's actually good for the story in some ways, and yeah, just talk about how to sort of view this without getting confused, because I think it is very confusing, or like it's easy to get confused by. The example we're going to use to sort of demonstrate what I'm talking about here is Asriel. Is Asriel at college? I've seen the theory floating around that Asriel isn't actually at college because when he tried to leave town, he would have fallen into the void or the depths or whatever. From a pure meta-narrative perspective, you might be tempted to say that when he left town, fell into the depths. From a pure narrative perspective, which I'm using as the juxtaposition, like the polar opposite, the idea that there's no metatextual elements whatsoever, then you would agree that yes, he is literally just at college. I don't think either gives the full picture, though, because Asriel did go to college, or, you know, maybe he's not actually at college, but he did go somewhere, right? He either left town or went to the shelter or whatever. And that's all within the game's logic. The same way that, like, Noelle used to go to Caddy's house, but that didn't actually happen because the game of Deltarune starts in Chapter 1, right? Not back then when all of that stuff happened. Just like Carol exists when she's off screen. She's still doing things. Rudy exists when he's off screen. There's no real way to take a purely meta-narrative angle at the story because you have to accept that the characters still experience the world in a narrative way. Even if we can agree that if the game is just a game, right, it is a sequence of programs and code being run by Gaster for the sake of us as the player, the game to the characters is still an active world, even though all of these events are being handled by game functions. But it is also important to understand that Asriel didn't actually go to college, right? Within the metatextual world of Deltarune, there is no college. No college campus is ever probably going to be made as a map in Deltarune. In the same way the interiors of the apartment buildings don't actually really exist, right? I'm sure if in the Weird Route we went into one of those, it would lead nowhere. So we have to kind of mix these two ideas together and say that even though Asriel probably didn't actually go to college because there is no college in the world of Deltarune, there's nothing beyond hometown's bounds, he did go to college within the game's internal logic. Even if he just got unloaded by the game, that happens to the characters all the time. That's not special, right? What Asriel has done by going to college is really no different than, you know, Susie going into the closet at the end of Chapter 5 and us no longer having access to her. And so, asserting that Asriel would have fallen into the void while trying to leave town is mixing both narratives together in a way that doesn't make sense, right? Asriel would have just been unloaded after leaving, or probably, realistically, because it happened in the past before the game started, never actually has existed yet. Asriel will probably become real as soon as he shows up in the game, right? Even though the characters know him to a deep degree, we have not met him, and he does not exist as like a sprite in the game files yet. So even though Asriel doesn't even technically exist yet, all of these things have still happened within the story. Does that make sense? And it's important to understand because that's exactly how the Dark World works. When a dark world is closed, the darkness inside cease to exist as, you know, living, breathing things. But they still remember what happened to them in the time period as soon as we bring them back into a dark world. For example, when we take Lancer to Chapter 2's Dark World and he spends some time in Chris's pocket. Similarly, the backstories of Darkners are derived from their existences as objects. For example, in Chapter 5, we learned that King's scar on his face was from getting ripped by a Lightner while they were playing cards with him. You can think of a similar thing happening to the Lightners when we're not paying attention to them, right? Like, these things are still actively happening even though we aren't there to see it. Which is why I used the Schrodinger's cat meme earlier. And finally, this is very important to think about because I'm starting to believe that the end of Deltarune will ask us to sacrifice one of our 3 major characters. Potentially 4, but that's probably the weird route. Would you really sacrifice Ralsei just because Ralsei is a Darkner and therefore not as quote-unquote real as the other 2? Because to us, on our level of realness, all 3 of these 3 are just game characters, right? Even though Ralsei is a Darkner and therefore within the internal logic of the game is an object, what is the fundamental difference to us between Ralsei and Chris or Ralsei and Susie? And I think that is part of the question that Deltarune is going to try to interrogate. It's important, alright? And this little video I made was just to make you more or less keep it in mind. Also because I wanted to make a video, but I didn't have a whole lot of time right now. I have at least 3 more Deltarune theories I want to get out before Fortune's Weave releases on September 17th. Maybe 4. But the 4th one is Origins of Darkners for Chapter 5, and I don't know if I can do that. Like, I literally don't know any of them. So, we'll see. I hope you'll look forward to it, like and subscribe, and let me know what you think in the comments. I'll see you then. Bye-bye.